Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldskype. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today, I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show. The Rescue Party by Aeolian Sands, Chapter 39. Of Gems and Fools. Rog of Gondolin did not know if he should be impressed that Fëanor had fallen from the ceiling with Morgoth's crown in his hands or not. On one hand, it was impressive. No one else would have dreamed of it. On the other hand, it was almost to be expected of Fëanor by now. Perhaps, Rog mused, he should be less concerned about Fëanor and more worried about what else lurked in the water-flooded caverns beneath Angband, or, as the circumstances would have it, how Morgoth, Lord of Darkness, was about to slam his skull in. "I do hope you thought this through!" Rog shouted at Fëanor as he attempted to swim against the current. His efforts were of no use. There was a whirlpool at Morgoth's feet, and the elves were being pulled to it like minnows of a waterfall. "Of course he didn't!" Aredhael replied before the current swept her head underwater. "Grab the boot!" came Glorfindel's voice from somewhere. "Like I want to grab Morgoth's boot! What the hell, Glorfindel?" But really, there seemed to be a little other choice. It was either Morgoth's boot, or the darkness of the pit the Grond had made, and truly, Rog already felt as if he was deep enough underground. So, against his better judgment, Rog flung both hands out and held on to one of the metal plates of Morgoth's plated boot as the waters continued to rush over him, draining into the unknown depths.
"Insects,"
Morgoth declared, and the rocks rumbled with his voice. The next thing Rog knew, he was flying through the air. He barely had time to mentally berate his blonde friend for his foolish idea to grab the foot that could, and did, kick him straight into oblivion. Then Rog's back impacted with the cavern's wall, and darkness consumed him even before his body hit the water. "Well," said Anida from where she and the rest of her party stood on a small ledge. The waters had guided them deep into an underground river and then into an expansive cavernous area. Then, as if some great force had released the floodgates of the deep, the waters had begun to churn in fury. It had taken a good deal of skill on Erawan's part with her trident, and some strength from everyone else to pull their barrels out of the water and onto this small rock ledge. No sooner had Anida looked out over the waters that she had seen a picture that would forever be imprinted in her mind. Morgoth himself kicking several small figures into rock walls. She did not even have to ask why the self-proclaimed Lord of Arda was there in the underground and not on his throne. It was certain to have something to do with the small figures. "Oh, Manwe," Eron gasped in fear. "Are they all right?" Anida stared into the darkness, but only Morgoth was there. None of the elves who had been flung stood again. Fingolfin reached for his sword, but his brother arrested the movement. "Let me go this time." "No, Ara, get back." "Morgoth!" Finarfin shouted in the great voice of a king. The Vala in his great armor turned towards the group. Anida felt adrenaline rush her veins as she reached for her own swords. "What strange times are these?" Finarfin continued. "Two kings meeting in the waterworks? Although I must commend you for your engineering."
"The lambs come so willingly to slaughter,"
Morgoth answered. "Love, what are you doing?" Erin cried in alarm, reaching to grab hold of Finarfin's tunic. But before she could reach him, the king in Valinor let loose a war cry and began charging Morgoth. "No, you don't!" Fingolfin's voice was full of power, and soon he was running after his younger brother. Anida stared for half a moment at the two brothers, racing each other to their deaths. "Well, we aren't just going to let them die, are we?" Nerdanel declared. "At least we won't let them die alone," agreed Anida. Fingon stared at Maedhros in alarm. One moment they had been fighting back to back, the two friends of old proving to be an unstoppable force to the orcs that fell to their blades. The next, Maedhros had suddenly fallen to his knees. "Maedhros!" Fingon shouted as he wielded his sword with deft skill, cutting through the shoulder plate of an orc and sending it to the ground. The High King kicked its body away from them. "Are you hurt?" He risked a quick glance at his friend, but could not see no new injury that had not been there when he had first seen him on the battlefield. There was no arrow piercing his armor or blade in his back. Instead, Maedhros was just staring at the ground. The oath. The oath, Vindicano. Fingon's brows knit in worry. He knew how much his cousin feared the oath that bound him. How it was this fear that he would one day lose himself to it that prompted him to give up the throne and take his brother as far away as possible. And Fingon feared the oath too. Feared what it might make him do. Yet Vindicano couldn't fight Maedhros. Never. But the High King would. The High King would have no choice. Fight it! Fingon shouted. We face Morgoth together! Whatever the oath is telling you, fight it! Then there was a blur of blonde, and someone tackled Maedhros where he knelt and embraced him in a hug. It's over, brother. Turko? Oh, hi, Finna, Gilagorm said, looking up. It was the nicest statement Fingon had heard out of his mouth since before the darkening of Valinor. Hi, Turko, Fingon answered, looking at the disheveled elf with dragon blood staining his clothing. What in the iron hells? Gilagorm turned and held Maedhros to his feet. Maedhros, who still appeared to be in a complete shock. You wouldn't know what it was like, Gilagorm continued as he threw an orcish axe at the foot soldier that made to attack the group. It was always speaking to me, weighing on me. I feel as if I've been born again. Go, Juan, get him! And Juan bounded off after another orc. There were fewer now. It's finally over, Maedhros whispered, standing. What's over? What are you two talking about? The High King asked in confusion as he glanced out at the field for any new orcs. The oath! Gilagorm very nearly shouted. He was stooping now to pick up a spear from the ground. The oath has been broken! What? Fingon looked at Maedhros, and the light shining in his friend's eyes told him that it was true. Fingon found himself smiling now, and he embraced both brothers. But how? He asked as an arrow whizzing by his head forced the king to cut off a hug and turn his eyes back to the battlefield. I don't know, maybe father, Gilagorm began as he threw the spear. Maedhros's face darkened once more as he too tossed a spear at one of the final orcs still brave enough to fight. You think father reclaimed them? Well, then he has what he always wanted. And all that matters is the oath is gone, Fingon reassured him. Yes. But here we are, only alive thanks to you. And he would rather be in that hell pursuing his gems than his own children as they fight for their lives. Fingon's smile was compassionate. Then let us push these orcs all the way back to their master, and you can speak to Fëanor about his failings yourself. Fëanor lay in a pool of his own blood. When Morgoth had kicked him, his body had broken on the walls. Some rock had split his forehead, and red blood flowed freely from the wound. Through blurry vision, he saw Glorfindel and Arantel laying motionless, Morgoth standing tall over them. Where was the Black Fiend looking? With much effort, Fëanor followed Morgoth's gaze till he could make out two racing figures. It was hard to see with the black spots forming in his vision, but was that? No, it couldn't be. His two little brothers were running for him. They were running to their deaths for him. Morgoth would crush them. And behind them, was that? No, please. But the gleam of red in the darkness was unmistakable. Nerdanel, no. He tried to say through Osanwe, but he was much too weak. Then Fëanor eyed the Silmarils, still bound to that iron crown a short distance from him. And he knew at once what he must do. Straining, he reached for the crown. His fingers fumbled before he, at last, grasped it. He looked once more at the foe of the world to see Morgoth's attention was still on his brothers, his law sisters, and his own beloved wife. What a foolish family, he thought. I was never worth dying for, and he looked at the glistening gems in the crown. Neither were these. When he was crafting the Silmarils, Fëanor had tried and failed countless times to find a physical vessel capable of holding the holy light of the trees. In the end, there was no crystal, fabric, or material that could ever hope to capture such a hallowed force. Yet if there was no physical material, then how did the trees themselves contain their light? And that was when Fëanor made his first key discovery, that Telperion and Laudalin's holy light was not held within their physical form, but bound within their spirits. And later, much later, after countless failures, Fëanor found a way to do something that no mortal since would ever hope to achieve. He found a way to take part of his very self and use it in his creation. The Silmarils were held together by a strand of his own spirit, and as such could stand among similar works crafted by the Ainur. But to break them meant to break his Fëa. For a moment only, Fëanor stopped to consider what he was about to do. When the Ra is broken, the spirit goes intact to Mundos. But if one's own Fea shadows into nothingness, does one simply cease to exist? Fëanor decided that it did not matter. Not to save his family. He placed a hand on the Silmaril, and it burned, and burned. Fëanor screamed and used the onslaught of pain to focus on this one final task. He felt the burning within and without, felt the holy light pressing from inside him, and yet he reached for the gem and wrapped all that he was around it. He screamed louder then. So much agony was in his cry that the walls shook, or was it the earth itself? The light was pulsing, ripping him apart from the inside. In one last final act of will, Fëanor pulled, remembered all whom he had loved, held himself together with all his strength, and then he let go. The light exploded outwards in a massive burst, and then the first son of Finwë knew no more as his spirit disintegrated into small specks of light. Maklor awoke at once. There was screaming in his head. "Brother," Amrad was saying, you haven't said anything, and I know you're hurt, but do you feel it? The oath?" But Maklor didn't respond. Couldn't respond. From the northern mountains, Éowyn and Sauron paused in their fight as a great beam of light exploded from the fortress of Angband. It split through cracks in the rock and sent great clouds of black crows fleeing for the sky. Wolves howled, and Sauron's face twisted in rage. "Master!" he screamed. "Melkor!" the wretched servant shouted again, and Éowyn only raised an eyebrow as he fought to catch his breath. "You!" Sauron screamed, his face becoming disfigured and twisted. "You did this! You killed him!" His once friend launched himself at the Herald of Manwë once more, but the Umayya's attacks became less and less coordinated. Éowyn stilled himself. He had to end this once and for all, for his sister and for the memory of the one named Myron whom he had loved. He launched himself into the air with his wings once more. Sauron snarled and reached for him, but Éowyn kicked his sword arm away. He held his own weapon in both hands, and in one precise arc brought it to bear on the vulnerable flesh between Sauron's shoulder and neck. The Umayya screamed and twisted. Éowyn kicked him again in the chest, making his foe fall onto his back. Éowyn landed on top of him, chest heaving. Sauron attempted to shapeshift, but Éowyn reached for the bleeding neck with both hands and held on. Sauron's visage turned to that of a serpent, and its body coiled around Éowyn, attempting to crush the herald in a suffocating grasp. Éowyn held on. Then the serpent's body twisted again, and they both fell to the side. They rolled and rolled down the mountain face, picking up speed, and rocks cut into them both. But still, Éowyn refused to let go. He felt first one, then another of his wings break on the rocks, and Éowyn knew that perhaps all that would be left of this fauna would be a mangled heap of broken bones. But he would not let this coward go. Thurid deserved at least as much. As the world spun faster and faster, Éowyn looked into the sickly golden eye. "It's over now. We're both dead now." Then the mountainside beneath them steepened, and for one roll, the two were falling through the air. "Except I still have friends who will come for me. And now there's no one left for you!" Then they hit the scree field, and Éowyn felt his head explode in light and pain. Netanel picked herself off the ground from where she had fallen when the light exploded through the caverns. "Nara! Nara!" she screamed. She ran along the dry riverbed, ran past the smoking, hulking body of Morgoth. Warily, she looked inside the great helm only to see a blackened body scorched by pure light that had been released from the Silmaril. A few yards away, Glorfindel was struggling to rise. What was that? That light felt like a surge of power. It healed me. Netanel did not answer. Whether the holy light of the trees healed or destroyed, she cared little. A Noldor with short, dark hair was kneeling by something. He turned to look at her. "No, don't, my lady. He's gone." "No." She pushed him aside to look at the body of her husband, but there was no body left. All that remained was a scorched pile of ash. "No!" she cried. "Not again! Please, not again!" Namo knew at once what had happened. "That fool," he said to Ulmo. He broke one of the Silmarils. He released the light of the trees? From within the very heart of Angband? Ulma answered, awe in his voice. Yes! Ero, can I ever get a moment's rest? But Namo, you don't understand. That light is hallowed, and Melkor is fallen, separated from Eru and all that is holy. If Melkor had been standing anywhere near it, the pure light may very well have destroyed him. And Fëanor would have destroyed himself right along with it. Even if it were not for the evil he has done, he would have had to break his own Fëa to break the Silmarils. Stop with the philosophical nonsense. Fëanor is going to appear in my home, uninvited, once again. I wouldn't be so sure that there is anything left of Fëanor's spirit to appear. He is most likely truly gone. Luthien stood on a hill overlooking Egalrest, watching the refugees from Nargothrond make their way into the city where Gyrdan's men helped them onto boats. She had heard, deep within the echoes of the Song of Ea, a healing melody. Was it just her imagination, or was the song louder than before? The normal cacophony of the fallen twisted voices lesser now. Luthien began to hum along. She closed her eyes. Vindulas could watch over the refugees for a moment. As Luthien fell deeper into her meditation, she began to see flickers of a different world. Some pine trees were whispering in soft voices, and she could hear the wind rushing forward. Light has come. Grand tidings to all, for light has come to purge the evil of Angband and free the captives there. The north wind sang, its voice like a winter storm. Light? Luthien asked in her fair voice. Yes, Lady Luthien. From where, O northerly wind? From within. Some claim the Silmarils themselves were broken. Impossible! For outside of Yavanna there was only one person who would break the Silmarils, and he would never... Or would he? Luthien glanced up, and she saw something then. Specks of light scattered among the high clouds. At once she knew that he did. Her heart clenched even as it soared with relief. Luthien opened her mouth to sing. She sang her song of spring, one that hearkened in new life and new beginnings. Flowers sprung by her feet, and the air grew warm around her. But she did not sing for them. Louder and louder she sang, always looking up at the specks on the distant horizon. Sing with me, her song urged. Sing of forgiveness. Let us bring one who was lost back home. And soon the land picked up her tones. The sea added its deep, muttering words, and the birds chirped in high trills of excitement. The trees swooped in an arcing melody, and all the land stood in agreement. Rejoice! Luthien's song seemed to say to those who that could hear. May we rejoice, for today love triumphs over darkness and forgiveness over resentment. Maklar opened his eyes. He did not need anyone to explain to him. Luthien, sweet Luthien, was singing. He heard her voice not with his ears but in his spirit. And with her sang all of Beleriand. And Maklar knew who they sang for. His Atar, the one he had thought lost so long ago to madness. The one who at the end of his life had thought only of his gems and not for the sons he had cursed. The one whose dying breath had not been a goodbye or an apology, but instead a demand and a renewing of that curse. His Atar had found his way back to himself. Fëanor had remembered those who loved him in the end after all. Makalara let his voice join the mighty chorus. Immediately the song swelled and warmth spilled into Makalara's entire fare. Father, he sang in words of power, Father, you come back to us. Do you know how much we have missed you? And then Makalara sang of memories long forgotten, of hours spent in the forge making jewelry for Amille, and of long hunts through emerald fields, of wrestling matches involving all of his brothers, and of game nights that lasted well past the mingling of lights. He sang of concerts, the ones in their own music room where even Kurva played, and of chilly mornings spent reading by the fire. We have missed you so much, Atar. For always. We have loved you. Come back. Luthien heard Maklar's song, and she watched as slowly the specks of Fëa in the far distance began to draw near. She smiled then. Your boys love you. Don't you leave them now. She watched as the fair reformed as it drifted west. And then Luthien laughed. They had done it. The song had brought the scattered pieces of Feanaro's spirit back together, and he would be whole again by the time he reached Mandos. Luthien could not help but giggle at the thought of Namo's face. End of chapter 39. 5 to go. Stay tuned.